everyone, it's Megan Long here, evaluating the accessibility of one of my PowerPoints and then later on one of my Word documents. So this is a PowerPoint that I use in my writing instruction, particularly for writing workshop before we dive into revising and editing our own body paragraphs and topic sentences in whatever essay we're working on. So right away, when I reference the Web Accessibility Guidelines, it tells me that I should click on the outline view. So if I head over to view and I click outline view, this is going to make me aware of problems right off the bat. So you'll see that nothing shows up on this title slide. And I immediately realize that that's because this is a picture instead of an actual text box. So I actually found this particular PowerPoint on an English Teaching Resources website and modified it for my own use. However, there's lots of issues with this because this is just a picture instead of a text box. It is not accessible and a screen reader could not read that. There are two options. I could include alternative text here, but it would probably make more sense just to reformat the PowerPoint entirely, delete this picture, and type in a proper text box with a proper heading. Looking down at number 2, you'll realize that I have the same issue. You're going to see that again and again throughout this PowerPoint. These are pictures instead of actual text boxes with appropriate titles. So I'd want to fix that right away. However, you can see that all of this information is properly formatted in the outline, which is very good. Looking at number 3, you'll see that that didn't even show up at all. So I would have to format that differently. Again, there are pictures here, but the text is not in the outline, so we need to make a fix with that. Number 4, again, you're just seeing the text, but you're not seeing the titles because they are pictures instead of text boxes. So again, you're going to see that again and again, but I found this looking at it through the outline view was super helpful. I immediately became aware of some of my major issues with this particular PowerPoint. You'll see that some slides are entirely blank because they are not actually text boxes. Again, they are pictures. So that is one of the first things that I'm going to be fixing with this particular PowerPoint. Okay, next up is looking at the slide layout. So it says to use the PowerPoint provided slide layouts when building slides. This is a problem right off the bat for me because I did not, right? I just included some of these images instead of actually typing in the text. So that's one of the first things I'm going to fix. Finally, looking at the reading order. If we tab through this, it is actually in the correct reading order. However, once again, our problem is that these are pictures. Okay. Moving on to images, clipart, and shapes, you would want to provide alternative text for any sort of images. I'm going to be removing these images entirely when I revise this PowerPoint and adding in the text, but there are a few pieces of clipart. As you'll see, I would probably want to make clear that these are checkboxes, and then I would want to say that these are arrows pointing to a poor example of a topic sentence. Okay, so, and you can see that this particular reading order is off too. If I tab through this, it's going to do the, it's going to show the topic sentence. It's going to show that it's poor, but I would probably just want to make that a bit clearer. Looking at the lists, I do think that the lists are formatted correctly. I used the bullet point list here on the home screen. You can see that bullet points. One thing that I might want to modify in the future is because these do happen in a particular order. First you have the hook, then you have the background information, then you have the thesis statement. It might be more applicable to use the numbered list here. Something for me to think about. The next component that you should be looking at are links. I do not have any links in this particular PowerPoint, so I did not need to worry about creating hyperlinks for that. When I reformat this, I will have to be a little bit more mindful of the tables as well. And the headings for those different tables. So I'd want to make sure that they are properly formatted for the screen reader, and that I would construct it in a way that accommodates a good reading order. Finally, the last step in the web accessibility guidelines is to look at the color. And I do think that there's a problem here because of the poor color contrast, particularly in this. So the reason that these colors are here is because they're going to match the next slide. They're going to correspond to where the topic sentence is, but that's not accessible. So first of all, there's really no distinction between these colors if you were someone that was experiencing color blindness. So I would need to make sure that I fix that. And I would probably just label them instead of color coordinating them. The rest of the document, I do think that it's okay to have this white background and the black text. I think that that's pretty readable though, but I'm mostly concerned with the color coordination here. So I would want to fix that. Looking at this PowerPoint in terms of UDL principles from the Rice reading. So when I'm actually teaching this content, I would be doing this synchronously. If it's an asynchronous lesson, I would be recording it. So regardless of if it's synchronous or asynchronous, I would record the lesson and screencast this PowerPoint and work through each of the slides, and I would provide captions for that. So that hits one of those principles. There is, we've been looking at mentor texts. We've been looking at, by the time this is in a 9th grade lesson, and students should be familiar with essay writing and body paragraphs and formatting their writing. But I would want to make sure that I check for prior understanding and do a little bit of pre-teaching if I have a student that isn't starting from that same base level. This assignment is definitely chunked. I never am going to be like, here's how you write an entire essay. Instead, we're going to look at an entire essay, then we're going to do mini lessons on how to write an introduction, how to write body paragraphs, how to write topic sentences, how to do a conclusion. So it's definitely chunked there. I also would provide them guided notes as they're working along with this particular PowerPoint in class. They could be taking handwritten notes, they could be typing notes, or they could just be listening to me, and they could have an audio recording of my notes. So the material would be accessible in a variety of different formats. When they're actually going to write their essay, I provide them with outlines and graphic organizers and sentence stems, and I differentiate that for my students' needs in the particular classroom too. There's also lots of practice in this, so they're not going right to their own writing. They're looking at examples and they're revising examples together with the entire class. So I do think that the lesson itself definitely hits on some of the UDL principles. There's checklists involved too. They can look at their own writing and make sure, do I have a good transition? So I do think that in terms of accessibility, not so great with the PowerPoint, but in terms of the lesson as a whole, I definitely try to incorporate those UDL principles. So that's the PowerPoint. If we head over to the Word document, we can analyze that for some accessibility. Oh, one thing that I didn't do was look at the particular review for the review of accessibility here, but it's going to show me everything that I was missing that I already pointed out with the outline. So again, all of these pictures I would need to just delete and replace with actual text boxes. It'll show me that I'm missing headings. It'll show me the color contrasting problems, and then it's just asking me to review the reading order. But I found this accessibility check really helpful. Okay, so looking at this Word document then. So this is an instruction sheet to give an overview of a particular research and writing assignment. So you'll see that it has the rubric and everything here as well. So if we're looking at the web accessibility guidelines and we head over to the pages where it says how to make an accessible Word document, the first thing that we're going to look at is the headings, and you'll notice that I have none. And that is a problem. So I would make sure that I'm at my home tab and I would look at the headings and I would properly format them with, this would be heading number 1, and then the task would be heading number 2. And I would want to make sure that I format the entire thing correctly. Okay. And then I would make sure that I would use them in the correct order too and not skip any heading levels. Images. There's no images in this particular document, so I don't need to worry about that. But if I were to include any sort of images, I would want to make sure that I provided alternative text for them. Looking at the lists, there's lots of lists in this. The lists are formatted correctly using the numbering list here, and it's a numerical list because this is the order that they're going to be completing the content. I don't actually have any links in this particular document. However, I should, because I am referencing lots of different documents. So in order to make this more accessible, I would probably link them to the Gale Global Issues Database. I would link them to I could even link them to a PowerPoint with our original thought lesson. I could link them to the graphic organizer. And I think that might be really helpful. Next up is looking at the tables. So with this rubric, you'll see that I have these tables, but it might not be very accessible from a screen reading viewpoint. So I would want to make sure that I am indicating column headers. So I would want to head over here and do that. So it says that I can click on the Design tab under Table Tools in the Table Style Options group. Table Style Options. I would want to indicate that this is a header row. So I would want to make sure that that's there. Check the reading order. So if I go through and tab through, it might be okay, but I don't think that these two things should be side to side. I'm grading their analysis and then I'm grading their research, and I think I should probably just have it in a vertical list instead of having these two things next to each other here. Probably be a bit more clearer. Again, looking at the color, I think this is okay from an accessibility standpoint. Nothing too tricky with color coordinating and contrast. The biggest issue with this particular document, I believe to be, is the lack of headings and the way that the table is formatted. I want to make sure that this is clear that this is 20 points, that you get 15 points for this, that you get 4 points for this. So I'd want to reformat that rubric a bit. And there's also some like extra space, which could be confusing as well. If we're tabbing through this, it goes from, it doesn't make sense. So we want to separate these two and not have them next to each other. Again, I love that there's an accessibility checker right in Word. So it's going to tell me you don't have a header row. It's going to tell me these are like merged tables and I need to work on fixing those. The repeated blank characters, there's some weird spacing. So I want to make sure that I fix those as well. Looking at this from a UDL principal standpoint though, this, like I said, this is an assignment and the assignment is chunked. I'm going to provide them with checklists so that they can make sure that they've done everything. I'm going to conference with them, but they're not just going to be told, here, write a paper. We have so many lessons with how to write a particular paper. We are looking at mentor text and examples. There's revision, there's feedback, and it is, eventually we're going to come to this purposeful, clear, authentic assessment, which is writing a research paper, which, fits directly with the state standards. So that is my analysis of my PowerPoint and my Word document. As you can see, there are definitely some issues. This was a very eye-opening module, and I hope to fix my documents definitely by next year. It's going to be one of my goals for the summer is to go back and revise these documents. Thank you.